Wednesday, October 8th, only 10 days away from the big day. You know what the big day is? It's my birthday. Come on, man.
All right.
Anyway, it's 9 o'clock. We're on every morning at 9 a.m. weekdays. Myself, Jim Check, and Ian Burns. If you like what we do, make sure you come back. You can watch this later. It's recorded. It's put on our multiple channels there. Yeah, and share it. And that's how you can help us out. You can even hit the tip jar. Some people have hit the tip jar. That's great. Or you can go read our stories, and there's a way to do stuff as well. But we're a local independent media outlet, and we've got this great show for you. It's called The Really Big Show. And today, the big headline, a really big, fat nothing burger. And reaction from the Washington trip. Budget talk gets very little attention. And Carney appointee makes record bank. Good for him, eh? Define journalism. That's what the Liberals have been trying to do. Is Canada becoming a police state? It was an interview I did with John Carpe. And Eby attacks Smith in unhinged rant. I mean, I think he's just getting worse and worse on this stuff. But all that and a lot more on The Really Big Show. We ready to go? We're going to kick it off here with a little, a former NDP here talking about Mark Carney's trip to Washington and what she saw. This is off CBC.
He took that approach. What do you think?
Well, I thought it was interesting in that exchange, actually, because as has been commented many times today, Trump spoke for most of that news conference.
Same as in May.
Yeah, Carney said very little. And it looked to me like he was asking for permission to speak at that point. You know, he tapped him, and it was like he wanted to say something, but he had to get permission to do that. I feel like, you know, to Supriya's point about, you know, the kind of what is this all about, I feel a bit naive for feeling so let down by today. Because I think that there were those moments in that news conference. It sounded like something big was going to happen, and I kind of got my hopes up because I hadn't been expecting a lot, and then my hopes really went up by the tone of that news conference. Even though, of course, it's always cringy to watch these things, but my hopes were up, and then there was nothing there, and there has to be something. I mean, I'm heartened by the fact that the talks are going to continue, but there has to be something substantial there, and that's, I think, the big danger is if it's too little.
And we got the Liberal Party seemed to like it, though. They put out a piece here. Listen to this and look at the Liberal Party. This is from the Liberal Party themselves. And they, of course, pick the plum out of that, and that's their job to do that. But here, we're going to give them a little airplay here.
But you know what? If I let this go, if we didn't win this election, if we had these people that were running, that were ruining our country, destroying our country with their open borders and men playing in women's sports and transgender from everybody and windmills all over the place, if we allowed that to go on for another couple of years, we would be, I'm not sure that we'd even have a country.
So that was the wrong clip. I'm sure the Liberal Party wouldn't have put that one up. There was the clip before that, because basically it attacked everything that the Liberal Party kind of like is sporting here, windmills and all that other stuff. But we'll play the right link here first.
There are areas where we compete, and it's in those areas where we have to come to an agreement that works. But there are more areas where we are stronger together, and that's what we're focused on. And we're going to get the right deal for America, right deal, obviously, from my perspective, for Canada.
He's a world-class leader. He's a man that knows what he wants, and I'm not surprised to see that he won the election and won it substantially, and I would think he's more popular now. He's a good man. He does a great job, and he's a tough negotiator.
There you go. That's what the Liberal Party was pumping. They took a couple of clips, strung it together, kind of like they did.
But the Liberal Party told us that Donald Trump was, you know, at best, a kind of
dystopian devil,
wayward fascist of some kind.
Dystopian devil,
a kind
Nazi,
of amateur
Hitler.
fascist.
Yeah.
So why would it matter if Trump now apparently thinks that Carney's a great guy? Why would that matter to anyone? Why would that matter to the Liberal Party? Interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like that there was some talks. There's a bit of a leak that Carney's raised the prospect of resurrecting the Keystone XL pipeline, and that's, you know, based on a report here. But It comes from the CBC's Rosemary Barton. I don't know if we put a bunch of stock in that, but there you go. That'd probably be the easiest pipeline to get done. I think Trump's, when he got elected, said he was going to resurrect that pipeline anyway. I mean, that talk's been going on. That one doesn't need
February.
Yeah, that one doesn't need David Eby or Yves Blanchette. That one just needs Alberta to get that one done. And
Well,
that
the
was,
Americans, though, that's the sticking point, and it always really has been. Well, mostly has been, hasn't it? It's the Democrats in America. They absolutely hate this.
that was the
And
first.
in a way, they're kind of, the Democrats' opposition to it is based on their support from various environmental groups. I think Environmental Defense, a very powerful NGO. If I'm not wrong, they were like really dead set against it, weren't they? But there's a few. It was, that one's tangled in the kind of NGO lobby complex from the environmentalists. And the worry is, if they do go ahead with it again, they persuade the company somehow to resurrect this, even though the company has said they're not interested now. But if they do, the Democrats could win the next election and then just kill it on day one, like Biden did last time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That was when Joe Biden, that was his first day. Remember, he had that stack of orders on his desk there, and that was one he didn't sign with the auto pen because they trumpeted that one out pretty loud, and the Liberals beat that one up too, right? That it was a big victory for the Liberals and the Democrats to kill the Keystone XL pipeline. And there you go. And
But
now,
this, I mean, it's interesting. Rosie Barton here, like, you were kind of, you didn't say it explicitly, but kind of hinting, she doesn't write stories very often. It's quite rare for her to do it. And I suspect that the reason that they've got their lead presenter or whatever, lead journalist, whatever you want to call her, the reason that she's done this is because the source, the secret source, was a very highly placed source. My suspicions are it was Dominic LeBlanc. And often, if you want a little trick of the trade of journalism, often when they anonymously quote someone, it's the case that in the same story, sometimes even the next paragraph, they will name that person. And sure enough, right after this unnamed source is quoted, Dominic LeBlanc said, I just think it was him, because they're talking about people who were literally in the room. I mean, how many people were in the room? It's either him or one of his little servants
either Tim
has told them this.
Tim Hodgson, because he was there as well. We'll see it from some of the photo ops. Anita Anand and Melanie Jolie showed up to get in all the pictures. They were there for the pics. I don't think they dared say anything in that room there. You know what I mean? Like Anita Anand. She said, we'll come to it. We'll get to it. But CTV wasted no time in getting somebody, an expert, to talk about how they got a body language expert about the Prime Minister's mostly silent appearance, because most people don't talk around Trump. Alongside the, I don't even know what that word, garrulous Donald Trump on Tuesday. You can explain that word. You're better at English language.
Garrulous.
Garrulous. What is that?
I wrote that word.
Monster?
I do know what it means.
Is that what it is? A gargoyle? Is that what they're trying to say?
Garrulous just means somebody that talks a lot.
But what they said, for CTV, their expert, again, quotations expert, what Carney did was quite masterful. Is he was very busy, active listening, and was cool and in control. Trump did not faze him. What were they watching?
Whatsoever.
I have no idea.
The idea that he was cool and in control is laughable, because as the previous video showed of her opinion, he didn't really do anything or say anything, or he also had to ask for permission to speak. That's an accurate observation, and I would encourage anybody that hasn't watched that press conference to watch it in full. I think he does it more than once. And there's even a time where Trump's like praising him to high heaven, talking all about Mark Carney, and Mark Carney just sort of says, it's almost like he's lost his voice. He just sort of goes like, "Thank you." It's kind of like he was reluctant even to say thank you after being praised, given like the full sort of, treatment, the full works by Donald Trump. I mean, and not to mention, there's other things like that references to liberal policies and things that he's espoused his whole life, and even references that could apply to members of his own family, and he just sat there and said nothing. The idea that he was in control is the biggest joke you could ever tell. But the thing is, I don't necessarily think what he did was wrong. I mean, I think if I was in his shoes, I probably would have done something similar. Just let him go. That makes Donald Trump happy. Your objective as the minor partner is to make the big guy happy, really, isn't it? And he loves to talk to the press. He loves to be in control. So let him do it. I probably would have done the same thing, or advised a prime minister to do the same thing. What's dishonest and disingenuous is now talking about him being in control, because that's just an obvious lie. That's a total falsehood.
Expert said that, though. Expert.
And then also the fact that he and his party campaigned on this, like, we're the tough guys, like, we're really hard and we're really going to grill Trump. Like, we're going to push back the tanks at the border. He's not getting in. And then he goes there and he's like a lapdog. That's the thing. Like, he campaigned on being a tough guy and pushing back against Trump, but he's governed by being his loyal servant. And
Well,
that's kind of that's where you have to raise accusations of hypocrisy, I think.
Yeah, and we've said it many times, is that you have to watch the actions and not the words, because the words don't match the actions. And that goes on and on. Well, what I did watch, I was watching when I could, whenever the camera was panning, the Melanie Jolie there, Anita Anand. You know, like, look at the reporters in that background shot. Here's Melanie Jolie, the photo op. She's the photo op person, I think. Is that part of her post, the photo op? Is that what she does there? Anyway, they were just kind of like scared and bobbing their heads because of all the reporters screaming. That doesn't happen in Canada, because they wouldn't ever allow that many reporters into the room. They only let their select few into the room, right? You only get the CPAC and those people, and Canadian Press, and then CBC and CTV and Global, and never with a room like that. Never.
And look at Hodgie there. I just find that so funny. Hodgson's just kind of like, it's almost like they brought that chair in at the last minute. It's like, oh, you want a seat? Okay. But it's also interesting, in this tweet, she says our priority, our first issue, the priority issue is the economy. It's like, okay, Mel. Yeah, I mean, it's becoming a little bit tiresome now, isn't it? Poll comes out, like a poll came out a few days ago. Number one issue by a long way for Canadians, cost of living, the economy. A couple of days later, Melanie's saying, oh, priority issue is the economy. It's just like, come on. You're sending me to sleep here, Melanie.
And then Anita Anand, also great with the photo ops and the virtue signaling. Still one of the big leftovers from the Trudeau Liberals. She did her best there with a photo op, because she got to be there, because she likes to use that word bilateral and multilateral and all these different fancy words, but doesn't get a lot done. But she did say, and I said it yesterday, that she was going to sit down with her counterpart and colleague, Marco Rubio. And you said not much of a counterpart.
Oh, well, it's just laughable, isn't it? It's like, look, put it this way. It's like some very, very high-ranking official in the Roman Empire receiving the foreign representative of the embassy of the Kingdom of Armenia or something. The Roman Emperor is like, sorry, who are you again? Armenia, right? Yeah, okay. So what's going on? It's like, you're having a laugh. You're having a laugh. I mean, and this is true. This is not just a Canada thing. I mean, if anything, Canada's a bit higher up the ladder, and maybe the Kingdom of Armenia is not fair. But
well, they might be ahead of us on that list right now. On that list we looked through yesterday, Armenia might be ahead of us.
But the reality is, it's the Republic of Armenia these days. But the reality is that, yeah, everybody goes to America basically, except a few countries, and it's just like a little sort of hopeless dwarf trying to not be too scared. There's only a couple of countries that don't do it, China being one of them. But yeah, I mean, still, the idea, and that she used that word again, counterpart. She'd love to think that was true, wouldn't she?
But if you look at Anita and the vitriol that she has spewed about Trump, through, you know what I mean? And then she's standing there just like so impressed as he shows off. I don't know, he's showing off some kind of thing that he's going to build probably. There's some kind of like model of
looks like that Arc de Triomphe or something.
That's what I thought it was, yeah. So, but they're all, you know, like showing off their pictures too, that they got to be in the Oval Office there. And Tim Hodgson too, like he recognized that to be part of the Liberal Party, you must do the photo ops, and there he is. He does his as well. Like Jolie did hers, and Anita Anand, and there's Tim Hodgson, just like, this is how you do it. This is how you do it.
He's got his hands in his pockets, though, hasn't he? That's a big no. Don't think you see Trump put his hands in his pockets, and he seems to care about things like that, doesn't he?
Then they got a little interview with Dominic LeBlanc. Let's listen in on to what Dominic LeBlanc says about his meeting.
Detailed structures of possible deals. We've agreed with the Americans that that wouldn't be constructive, and your very technical, precise question sadly may land me in that zone of discussing publicly details of an agreement, and you can't imagine I would ever make a mistake like that.
So you just leak it to somebody. Is that what we do,
As he was walking down the stairs, because he's on the roof there by the looks of things, isn't he? It's like, Rosie, here's the scoop, Rosie. No, but he's been stung, hasn't he? Because and this is the thing, the other day when I was saying Dominic LeBlanc is a far more normal human being than the rest of Justin Trudeau's like inner circle. But he was saying, like, he basically said, yeah, I cocked up big time when I said that we were going to have a deal in the coming weeks. You know, in his own way, he said that. He said, I'm not going to do that again, but I'm generally quite optimistic, and we had some good chats. And he also said on the rooftop there, he said, we had a chat about steel, aluminium, and energy. And that is that's where a lot of people are now starting to say, all right, so that's the Keystone then. That's how he kind of wrapped up Keystone XL, was energy, which is an extraordinarily vague term. But something I find quite interesting as well is that Carney's he's only just got back to Ottawa now. He just landed 15 minutes ago, something like that. He spent the night in Washington, and he didn't leave till 10:30 Washington time in the morning. I just find that quite intriguing. Like, what was he up to there? It seems, you know, something else is obviously the discussions will have gone on into the night, I assume, maybe even this morning. So yeah, he's going to be in question period in about 2 hours. So maybe he'll have some kind of announcement there, or maybe he'll give some kind of speech after.
Well, your former colleagues at the Daily Mail put out a piece there. They kind of saw it differently than the CTV expert, in saying Carney looked more like a transformed into a shrieking teen at a Taylor Swift concert to butter up Trump. So they must have got a different expert to look at what Carney's performance was there.
How good is that? How good is that photograph? At the Mail, when I was there anyway, the picture desk was supreme. You wouldn't think that, would you? Like an institution devoted to writing and journalism, but the picture desk they were the big boys, really. Yeah, well, because that's what the Mail's all about, that, and you know they're smart for that because people are attracted to pictures, and if you've got a good picture, they'll click on it. But the pictures they've chosen there for the for that photograph, well, there's two, isn't there? It's just so funny. It's like he actually does look like a sort of Taylor Swift fangirl, and then the other one as well, he's got his hand on his thigh there. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit harsh that from the Mail. They've been a bit cheeky there, aren't they? But he certainly was deferent. He was very, very quiet, like bizarrely quiet. Even like the biggest Trump toadies in the world, like Mark Rutte, now in charge of NATO, they at least speak. They at least say something. Like it was extraordinary that Carney just didn't say anything, really.
I did be on the ballot.
He mentioned something about hockey at one point and the Blue Jays.
Oh. He said he's coming down for the World Series. Like he said, he's coming down.
Yeah. It was a bit like, I think of all the press conferences I've seen, that has to be the one where the victim has been the most pliant and deferent and quiet. Yeah, I've never seen that.
Yeah, again, a totally different take from the CTV's expert. Again, you can kind of see the bias in there because, I mean, I watched that too, and I didn't see what the CTV expert saw. But here's Brian Lilley as well, you know, talking about what we get again. Obviously, Brian Lilley, fairly critical. But, you know, like the end result is nothing, right? And that's our headline, is a nothing burger, a big, fat nothing burger. You know what I mean? It was built up again. That has to be something like a big deal. I did be on the ballot yesterday with Renee Merrifield, and she noticed a couple of things too. She says that Mark Carney has this bad habit of winking all the time, and that was put out by some of the reporters. CBC reporter put it on. You go watch Beyond the Ballot. she was saying, like, he was winking at the reporters. Like, one, what's he doing winking at the reporters? Like, you know, like is it a tick he has? But he winks a lot, right? And you've seen that wink that he does even when he's taking questions and that. It's just like, it's kind of like, you know, when you're being dishonest or whatever, and then you just kind of wink and say, see, I'm just putting on a face here, right? So.
Well, CBC was praising him, saying, "Oh, the media likes that kind of thing." I mean, who cares what the media likes? You're not trying to impress the media. You're trying to impress Donald Trump. He is your lord and master, as you're making very clear as you sit there and squirm.
Yeah.
It is very odd, and I thought it was very odd. And he couldn't help himself. He was like a little schoolboy, where like the teacher tells him off, and he goes like, "Lads," it's like trying to kind of keep credibility with your gang. As you get sort of dressed down by the teacher or something. It's very immature. But I also thought it was extraordinarily immature that he sat down for that interview with The Economist that nobody seems to have picked up, where he insulted Donald Trump's knowledge of economics, where he said that Donald Trump does not seem to understand that he has the reserve currency and that therefore he can run a deficit. It's fine. He can run a trade deficit. I mean, remarkable that he thought that was a good idea. Why did he think it's a good idea to imply that Donald Trump is completely dumb and ignorant of economics? But he likes to speak out of both sides of his mouth, doesn't he? And I don't know. As far as he's concerned, you know, if he were to hear our accusations here, he'd probably just laugh his head off. He's like, "Did you watch that press conference yesterday? Trump absolutely loves me. I'm fine."
Yeah, and this is another piece from CTV. Carney leaves Washington without a deal as Trump touts Canada-U.S. merger. Carney did say, you know, after he won the election that Trump stopped talking about the 51st state, but I think he threw that jab out there a couple of times.
Yeah. Well, he's done it. He did it there as well, didn't he? Did it at the press conference. Did it a couple of days earlier. Yeah. He hasn't stopped doing it. He's like getting a thrill out of it, isn't he? He's finding it funny. Yeah. But CCV's wrong. He didn't leave Washington, did he? He was still in Washington.
The polls, Angus Reid poll here showing, I mean, whatever stock you can put in the polls, that Carney's honeymoon is washing away here. And again, you know, I think some people are starting to lose patience. They hear a lot of talk, but there's not a lot of walk that goes with it. And that's the NDP down to 6 seats. And Elizabeth May, like, how does she hang on to that 1 seat? Like, that is...
Good ground game, I guess.
Out of all this, that's the one I look at and say, like, how is that even possible, right? And the NDP doesn't even get a picture anymore, right? Because they have an interim leader, right? So they just have, like, and also ran there, right?
That's funny, yeah. I would say, though, there's another poll, and it just backs up what you said. Like, you don't know how much stock to put into it. Another poll's come out the other day from Leger, and that has the Liberals 6 points ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really...
So...
mean nothing
at this point,
election.
Yeah, as well, even if there was to be a surprise election, like let's say this year, another one, obviously the polls would change, wouldn't they? Because people change their mind during the period, the election period itself.
Yeah, we saw it here because it was looked like a total wipeout for the Liberals, and lo and behold, not so much.
Yep. Although I don't think that they would have won the way they did with the strategy they employed if he'd gone and met Donald Trump during the campaign and behaved like that in that servile fashion. I don't think I don't think he would have been able to sell the elbows up thing.
I think if they ran the election right now, I don't think he wins. But you know, what do I know?
Well, also just to contradict Donald Trump, who said he won this big election, substantial victory. Mark Carney didn't win the election. The Liberal Party did not win the election. It was a minority. That's not a win. No. That's a plurality of the votes and of the seats, but it's not a majority. To really truly win and govern in the Westminster system, you need a majority.
Yeah. Aaron Gunn, and this is a little clip here we're going to play first, and we'll talk about it here.
Thank you, Chair. Chief Roskamp, is Canada currently releasing repeat offenders out on bail that are a threat to public safety? I
believe in some situations they are.
In Vancouver, just a couple years ago, there was a report that 40 individuals, prolific offenders, were responsible for over 6,300 incidents with police in just a small period of time. In your estimation, what % of crime that's being committed in your community is being committed by a small number of criminals, repeat offenders, or individuals already well known to police?
It is a very high percentage. I would say it is above 80%.
Chief, do you have members on your force, rank and file, that are frustrated that they are having to arrest or detain the same people over and over again for the same or similar offenses?
Yes, sir.
Do you believe that when it comes to this problem with repeat, prolific, violent offenders, that the Liberal plan to confiscate thousands of firearms from law-abiding gun owners will help improve the problem in St. Thomas?
No, sir.
Do you believe that confiscating firearms from law-abiding gun owners or cracking down on repeat offenders is a better use of your finite police resources?
Enforcing chronic criminality, finding solutions as supported by the federal government at all levels of government, provincial as well. But that is the best use of our time. Our communities deserve to be safe and to feel safe. As was just recently mentioned in a previous question, communities plagued by chronic criminality, safety seems to have become a privilege instead of a fundamental right. And as such, we're failing our communities, and our communities deserve better.
Yet, I did that interview yesterday with John Carpay from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. What the Liberals have prioritized are bills, Bill C2, Bill C8. This is all to do with internet stuff, and how to stop what they view as hate speech on the internet, and going after people's internet accounts and all that stuff without oversight, instead of addressing the thing that mayors have written about, provinces have asked for. Is this jail, not bail? And Sean Fraser says they'll look at that after they get these other bills through. It just doesn't make any sense why this was
Start with the priorities. Looking in people's mail without a warrant, cutting off their internet, and making sure that there aren't any swastikas flying around. Because obviously we see loads of swastikas all the time. I can't remember the last time I left my house and didn't get swastikas thrown in my face.
And the more troubling thing is that a person like Melanie Joly gets to do this with an order that can be remained secret too, so they can come and cut off your internet and not even have to tell you or tell or they can tell the cable companies or whoever the internet provider is that they're not allowed to talk about it as well. And then you have to apply. You got to go watch the interview with John Carpay. Then you have to fight in court. You need about $100,000 to fight, and it'll take 2 to 3 years for you to get your internet back. This is the priority, not this, right? These are the priorities that the Liberals are putting in front. So again, that I did an interview with Lisa Bildy from the Democracy Institute, and she said the United States has exported all its culture wars, but none of the freedoms that are offered by the First Amendment. So what we have is a government here that continues to compress what is our freedom of rights in the Charter, our Charter of Rights. There's some guardrails in there, and what it is all these bills seem to be just press on this side, and they tend to go after the law-abiding citizens. Well, in Kelowna alone, there's one guy in Kelowna here that has 232 active files, 32 failures to appear, and I think it's 32 failures to comply, continually released. And
can you imagine trying to explain that to somebody even like 40 years ago, 50 years ago? Can you imagine trying to actually go through and say, yeah, and now he's out, he's free?
And in the meantime,
what would their reaction be?
In the meantime, they basically persecuted Tamara Lich and Chris Barber for 3 years. And took like a SWAT team to arrest Tamara, and for basically was political dissent and noise violations and parking violations. And that's what, and it's a good interview to watch because they're just honking. Yes. Honking is, obviously if you bust into people's houses, steal stuff, shoot things, that's all. Okay.
On a sort of slightly related note, some very interesting breaking news here. The U.S. Justice Department has just arrested a man and accused him of intentionally starting that fire in Los Angeles in January, the Pacific Palisades fire.
I thought that was
Just thought that was quite interesting.
Was it that climate change that started that fire?
Well, yeah, and that was, if you remember, that Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump were having constant arguments about how stupid Trump was apparently for having not taking climate change seriously and all the rest of it. And sure enough, it was allegedly was a 29-year-old Uber driver, by the looks of things, who thought he would set fire to something.
Imagine that, eh?
But it's, I mean, how many times have we seen this as well? But it doesn't seem to matter. Like, people don't seem to be interested in that, when it's arson. It doesn't seem to make any difference,
when
really.
did
does
they
it?
apologize? When Stephen Guilbeault jumped up on the podium there and talked about the Jasper fires as this big, climate change event, and then all of a sudden they get shown the documents that say that this was basically warned about for years, that they didn't take care of the dead trees in and around Jasper, and then he just kind of like slinks away, and meanwhile CBC,
just move on to the next one.
Yeah, meanwhile CBC still pumps out the stories on climate change. And then the other one is the wildfire in Nova Scotia, where they started screeching about climate change and taking away people's rights. And then it was the wildfire fighters that put out a thing and says, no, it's not climate change. It's failure of government to mitigate these impending disasters. Anyway, this is what should be on the agenda for every outlet. This deficit, Canada's deficit, has surged to $100 billion, and that's from the National Bank chief economist. And let's do our usual thing here. Can we pull up the CBC website and see where the budget fits into this narrative this morning? What do we got? Don't scroll down. We just want to see above the fold. Otherwise, maybe just down a bit so we can see this. So I don't see anything there. So you got White House, James Comey. That's important for us, right? The FBI agent. That's important, right? James Comey. 2 James Comey. 3 James Comey stories. Is that the CBC? No, that's CNN. Yes, CBC. We need CBC. I was just what is going on? How much of that is going to be?
They're not that mad.
I was just thinking, wow, that's crazy. So what do we got here? So there's the Rosie Barton's Keystone thing. U.S. president. We got Trump. Don't scroll down.
Modular housing. How will Canada do with modular housing?
There you go. That's it. 2 armed and dangerous individuals. Yeah. So where's the budget?
Then we've got James Comey. You missed the James Comey. They do have it.
James Comey is important.
Underneath how we're all going to love modular housing is the Right Reverend James Comey.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. And then this one, we finally, Mark Carney set a record. Breaking records. So his latest appointee has just made the CEO of Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation look like a pauper, as he rakes it in at $679,000. That's just his salary. There'll be a bonus on top of that, and there'll be trips and cars and all that other stuff, like a chauffeur-driven limousine and all the pomp that goes with it. So this former banker, and I thought they gave this post to Stephen Fuhr. I thought, why? And he's a former military guy. Why is he not competent enough? But instead, they put this guy in there for him. He's going to oversee our defense contracting. He's now the highest paid appointee at $679,000. We got to add this: $679,100. Did he negotiate that extra 100? How did they end up at 100 there?
And sure enough, he and Mark Carney were formerly business associates at Goldman Sachs.
Imagine that. And then just in comparison here, the $292,000 for the Comptroller General, $309 for the Minister of Finance, plus there's some other stuff. $325,600 for the CBSA President, $375 for the Ambassador to the OECD, $375 for the Commissioner of Revenue, on and 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 on. Let's not forget, these are just the appointees. There's also, like we talked about, Dr. Mona Niemer yesterday. She rolling it in at $393 for looking out at the sky, telling you how you need to call UFOs. Like, basically, language is everything. They're just like when you're talking about language is everything. Even when we're talking about UFOs might get offended if you don't use the right language.
UFOers. I will say though, in defense of our dear precious Liberal Party and also Stephen Fuhr, I think Stephen Fuhr he's going to be like the Democratic oversight, so to speak, isn't he? Whereas this guy's going to actually roll his sleeves up and do the actual job. That is often the case, isn't it? Where the ministers and whatnot, they're not really like in the trenches. They just kind of supervise and make decisions from a very high level.
But this is a new arm of the government, though. This is like brand new, like in a government that's.
But I think he might have supervision over it, though. That was my understanding when he did the press conference.
I get that. He will work for Fuhr, but I'm just saying this didn't exist before. This is a new one.
Yeah. But then the other thing I'd say, in defense of his salary, you don't want to. I say this often. Whatever you do when you run your government, just do the opposite of what they do in Britain, which is one of the I have to say at this point, the stupidest ruling class on the planet. Nobody's as stupid as they are. There's nobody that matches their stupidity. And what they do in Britain is they create jobs like this and they advertise it on the government website, and it's like salary £45,000 per annum, which is like maybe 70,000 Canadian dollars. Who the hell is going to do that job? You're going to get a kid. You're going to get a child who would apply for that sort of job. You do have like, it can be a bitter pill to swallow, but you do have to pay big money to get people with ability, don't you?
I would rather, if I was in that job, I would rather give them a smaller base and performance bonuses. If they get this done.
Yeah, well, there's that, sure, yeah. But either way,
at Elon Musk.
that could work. But just don't do what the British do. Don't offer a salary that wouldn't even get you an apartment in London to rent. Don't do that. Don't be as stupid as they are.
Look at the Elon Musk and what he's accomplished. Zero salary, makes outlandish goals, and they say, well, I'll give you the moon if you can make these outlandish goals. And he's like, sure. And he does it, and then it's time to get paid, and they're just like, well, that seems like too much, right?
$1 trillion.
Here's more secrecy from the Liberals. A question here. Liberal MP Stephanie McLean, Secretary of State for Seniors, yesterday would not say how many cabinet meetings she's attended since her appointment last May. She's under questioning from Senator Denise Batters from Saskatchewan, has declined comment on her salary, office budget, core duties, and whether she was assigned a car and a chauffeur. I don't understand why they don't just make that public knowledge. It just seems odd. They don't want to answer to anything. I thought, remember when they ran under transparency and accountability? Not so much.
I mean, it is terrible. And again, well, I often say this, but I would encourage people to watch these things. I'm guessing this was at a Senate question period. I would encourage people just to watch these things and watch the committees. Just like watch that Champagne. I think it was yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or Monday, whatever it was. Just watch them all the way through. Watch Dan Albas. If you're in Kelowna area, chances are he's your MP. Watch him in the Transport Committee trying to ask questions of Chrystia Freeland, even if you don't like Dan Albas, don't like the Conservative Party, whatever. Just watch it and see her reaction. See the contempt with which they deal with democratic scrutiny. They hate it, and they squirm, and they refuse to answer the question. They just blab. They try to get the clock down. And every time they do that, they're not insulting the Conservative Party. They're not insulting Dan Albas. They're insulting you. That's who's being insulted there. You got to get wise to that.
Yeah. So the Liberals are the Leaders Debate Commission in a report to Parliament says it will not define journalism after all. Journalism, right? The agency, twice cited by the federal court for attempting to enforce arbitrary definitions, concluded it had no business trying to legally define what constitutes journalism. You've said this a million times when they did that to us as well, right? Decide who and who isn't a journalist. The government deciding, and that's dystopian. Like that, how do you have a democratic society when the government in power decides whether you can be a journalist or not? Then we end up with government-funded media that you just saw them. They did the piece there. The expert came out. They found an expert to say that Carney looked like $1 million in that meeting when the Daily Mail comes out and says they look like Taylor Swift groupie. It said neither. Well, go ahead.
I'm just saying, ask any self-respected journalist. Just sit down with one and ask them to talk about other outlets other than other journalists, and you'll see how diverse opinions are on what is and isn't journalism, what constitutes good journalism, what's bad journalism. Watch the couple of interviews that you did with Holly Dawn that runs this platform, Blacklocks, because she addressed this very subject twice, didn't she? Like, you'll see that journalists can't decide. Journalists themselves can't make these determinations. What makes you think that some dork bureaucrat appointed by the government is going to be able to make that determination? It's just farce. It's completely farcical.
And lo and behold, that's what this commission found out. It's neither the commission's role nor its responsibility to attempt to legally define what constitutes journalism. And that's from the report of the Democratic exercise of serving the voting public. And the report follows a long-running feud between the commission's lawyers and Rebel News. Rebel always getting its face in there. Rebel twice successfully challenged its blacklisting in 2019 and 2021. You know, the Trudeau Liberals, and Carney started that too. I think in his first, remember in Edmonton, in his first event that he had, he blocked out a few reporters. And I think the Western Standard was one of them. He decided that they didn't fit his needs, and he blocked some of them from attending. The commission in 2025 finally accredited Rebel News, only to face criticism from other journalists who disapproved of their questions at the post-debate conferences. And then the story just came out a couple days ago that they said they were scared for their lives and they feared for their safety and all that stuff. And they got the questions period dropped in day 2 because they didn't like the questions that were being asked. And if you ask me, the questions that were being asked were being targeted to Mark Carney. He didn't like the questions either. So lo and behold, they said, "Oh, we can't have question period." That is a travesty. And the liberal government-funded media helped them make sure that there was. If they couldn't control who gets to ask the questions, they just wouldn't allow a question period.
I think the most disgraceful thing that should be highlighted here is that other journalists went and ran to the teacher, the hall monitors, and said, "Oh, you can't have them. They're not real journalists. We don't like their questions." What? You should. That is not the business of a journalist. That's not the attitude. That's not the perspective of a journalist.
Again,
as a journalist, you should be happy to hear people in power being asked all kinds of questions. And if it's hard, if they're hard questions, if they squirm, then all the better. You should be happy about that. But this idea, these people, honestly, they just have no idea what journalism is. They couldn't even begin to define it. They don't know about the history of journalism. Look at the 18th century when newspapers are really starting to be invented in places like London. Look at the articles. As I say a lot of times, read the primary sources. Look at the kind of things that journalists, the people who literally invented the profession, if you want to call it that, look at the sort of things that they were saying and writing about. Highly opinionated, almost like they were all opinion columns, basically, and often very controversial. And just grow up.
And then look at who's fighting to kind of who's fighting to keep journalists away from it, like who's trying to define what journalism is. It's the ones living off the government. It's the ones that are like the CBCs, the CTVs, and that. And then if you look in the States, in direct contrast, Trump has like 100 people in the room, and they allow in the briefing room new media, all kinds of people get to go in there. You and I could probably end up in that room. But could you get into the parliamentary gallery?
What's that YouTuber fella? The one that wears the hat. He was there, wasn't he?
Can you get into the parliamentary gallery?
Yeah, that's a good joke.
Yeah, there you go. Again, happy days for Brookfield as Carney's former firm raises $20 billion for green projects. And so that's Brookfield Asset Management, with U.S.-based firm announcing investors committed $20 billion to its blockbuster green fund. You got to wait for it, though. The haul exceeded Brookfield's own expectations, with the Globe Mail suggesting it underscores just how much money is being spent around the world to accelerate the shift to net zero carbon economy. The first version of Brookfield's Energy Transition Fund, get ready for it, was managed by Carney, raised $15 billion for the likes of carbon capture.
And battery storage. That's another one that's getting government largesse, isn't
that
it? Or
one
taxpayer largesse.
That Tim Hodgson promoted there, that U.S. company that's come to Canada to take 75% in tax credits and then get the ability to tax our oil production companies. Imagine that, a carbon capture. This is what I'm saying. This is the whole thing. It's all about carbon capture. Here we go.
Good times for Brookfield, though. You have to stand back and admire. Their C-suite must be like champagne 24/7.
And we said yesterday, I remember when I said to you, we talked about this carbon capture company that came in. I said, guess who else sells carbon capture? And lo and behold, they just raised a bunch of money to fire up their carbon capture machine. I think XL Pipeline will likely get approved, and the only proviso is you got to buy carbon credits from none other than
I wonder, do you think that there's any possibility that His Majesty Mark Carney, when he leaves politics, that he might get some kind of job at Brookfield again? That'd be an interesting one, wouldn't it?
I'd be willing to put a couple dollars on that one for sure. If I was what's that betting site called? Polymarkets?
Yeah, Polymarket, yeah. That'd be a good one.
Pierre Poilievre put out this, if you could run this clip without sound as we talk about this, the truckers convoy here. Pierre Poilievre put out this tweet. There's that video that you can run there while we're talking about this. Tamara Lich and Chris Barber peacefully protested that imposition of the emergencies measures, and the federal court found it to be unlawful, unconstitutional. And then Pierre goes on to say, instead of pursuing rapists, drug dealers, and other monsters, the Crown sought lengthy prison sentence. They were looking for 7 years for Tamara Lich and 8 years for Chris Barber. They're still back in court, though. They do have one more court case left, and that's to get Big Red back. Then the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms is also funding that so that he can get his truck back. That was seized. And then they talk about this. You can let that play. They talk about this as like this was like all the ists that they talked about, calling them. I remember Trudeau had a list of ists there, and saying it was a small fringe group. And then
misogynists. That was one of the ones that he one of the ists.
And then if you watch the interview with John Carney, it says, like they were listening to the police. They were moving. There was no violence. The only violence that the Liberals and Jagmeet Singh promoted was that fire that turned out to be, again, somebody that lit that was mad at his ex-girlfriend or something. It had nothing to do with the truckers. But
when the police went in on their war horses, that looked a little bit like violence to me when I saw some people being knocked over.
The Romans, they learned that one from the Romans, right? How you deal with protests.
There's a couple of them there.
That's not the ones, but yeah. So there you go. Sad day for Canada, though, that they go after this. And, like they actually had like a SWAT team show up to arrest Tamara Lich. She spent some time in jail as well.
Well, not to mention, this is like in January. I think it's January, isn't it? That'll be 4 years, the 4-year anniversary of.
Government has spent millions of dollars prosecuting these people too, right?
Yeah. So 4 years hanging over you, whether or not she spent time, and she did, didn't she? Spent some time in custody.
She did.
But even if that wasn't happening, can you imagine just for a second?
Without bail. Hey, without bail. There was not even an option for bail.
Yeah, I remember. But imagine just for a minute, like if you can, put yourself in their shoes, having that hanging over your head, like the Crown chasing after you, trying to put you in jail. The amount of stress, being defamed regularly in the media and insulted in the media, or even just having it reported neutrally, having your face everywhere as like a criminal. That in itself, 4 years of that, that's pretty extraordinary punishment itself. And that's what people mean when they say the process is the punishment. A lot of people looked at this and thought they won't get jail time, but the process has been quite adequate as punishment. As it is, they haven't been given jail time, but they have been given house arrest, which is going to suck. I'm pretty confident saying.
During this 3 weeks, how many stories were done by the government-funded media about how this was similar to January 6th, an insurrection? Is that how weak the Canadian government is? A bunch of people with trucks and honking horns, parking violations. Parking violations and noise violations. Is this how the Canadian government falls? Is this it? This is all they had?
Also, like in a part of Ottawa that, if anyone's ever been there, will know what I mean. Like it's not really a residential area. It's just there. It's all like government buildings.
During COVID, there was nobody in there. It was an empty building.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about like Wellington Street and on the other side. Like Mark Carney's office is on that side of the street. It's like it's a lot of sort of government buildings.
It's a shameful period for Canada, and also the Emergencies Act, which was again now discovered that it should never have been enacted. But well,
that's when people stopped talking. That's when we stopped hearing any sort of news about it or any discussion about it, isn't it? When the judge came out and said, yes, this actually violated the Constitution. The response, and I think then people thought, okay, whoops.
I'm sure there'll be some lawsuits coming out of this as well. But here's an example of a different thing, though. A truck driver charged with killing a mother and daughter in crash given bail despite previously fleeing Canada. No bail for Tamara Lich, though.
And the best bit about this, if you read that last line there, the judge's justification, Judge Michael Clark deserves to have his name out there. I do think that the public would maintain confidence in the administration of justice if I were to release Mr. Singh on appropriate conditions. Why do you think that, Your Majesty, Your Honor? Why do you think the public would maintain confidence in the administration of justice? What makes you think the public has any confidence in the administration of justice in the first place? Never mind if you give bail to somebody who's just come back to Canada after fleeing when being arrested. Just literally bananas, isn't it?
The government-funded media put out there, and a lot of people that watch that blindly and eat that like pablum, believed that it was our January 6th moment, when the January 6th moment wasn't even a real insurrection. And it was just, again, the Canadian government could fight back against the Americans and their tanks, according to Chrystia Freeland. We can fight them, but we couldn't fight a bunch of truckers and honking horns. That was
the worst thing of all still remains to me is the reaction, specifically the reaction of Justin Trudeau. That to me is that's even worse than what happened with the debanking and the Emergencies Act, everything. The initial reaction of Justin Trudeau, because I feel like he could have nipped it in the bud.
Easily.
Really early. But he refused. He explicitly refused. He said, I will not meet with these people. Why wouldn't you do that? Even Richard II met with Wat Tyler. I mean, obviously then killed him. But, even kings in the Middle Ages would go out and parley with protesters.
I think was it Gorbachev or Yeltsin that went out there when there was tanks at the doorstep in Moscow?
Yeah, no, that was Yeltsin, wasn't it? Standing on, I think that was Yeltsin. Yeah, I think he stood on a tank. But no, it's true. It's like when this kind of thing happens. Look, man, it's incumbent upon you as the leader of a country, the leader of a people. It's incumbent upon you to be responsible enough to go out and speak to people, even if you don't like them, even if you think in your rather small mind that they're racist and misogynist and all the rest of it. You got to speak to them, and that whole thing could have been averted. I'm pretty confident that was possible, and it's just a shame, really, because it almost felt at times that Trudeau wanted this to happen because it was a wedge issue, and that certainly is what it ended up being.
The Democrats and Liberals used this January 6th moment to kind of like say it was a threat to democracy, and again, the January 6th moment in the U.S. overthrow of the government. They forget that America has the toughest military in the world. You know what I mean? A few Black Hawk helicopters could have came in there and said, like, you got 5 minutes to leave the building in pieces, or, like you can walk out the front door, or you can come out in a bag, whatever it takes, right? But you're coming out. I mean, there's no threat. Neither one of them were a threat to anything other than to somebody's ego. Moving on, though. The Bank of New Zealand with a surprise cut, and I said they needed to do that here in Canada because we have so many people that are underwater in their mortgages right now and aren't going to be able to make them. They need to cut this because after Tiff Macklin told Canadians, go ahead and get that mortgage, and then raise the rates 19-fold in unprecedented fashion. Now a lot of those things are coming to maturity, and a lot of people, especially with this economy, have no idea what they're going to do.
Well, New Zealand, and this person highlights it here about people leaving, and the economy being in free fall. I mean, New Zealand is in trouble now. Yeah, they need some sort of plan.
Sound familiar? Again, I did an interview with John Carpace. You can watch it. It's a 30-minute interview there. Again, he says Canada could become a police state by Christmas. It's well worth your time to watch. The erosion of freedom.
That wouldn't be a very good Christmas present, would it?
We're going to move on to our BC section here.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
Ravi Parmar coming out there saying there's no pipeline project, just a $14 million PR. So they're ramping up the PR attacks here on Danielle Smith. But you got to listen to this. David Eby, like he's been in front of the microphone a little bit there, but he's just unhinged in this rant here. Let's listen in on Mr. Eby.
A significant piece of the BC economy, a significant aspect of the social license we have to deliver major projects like that and projects that are coming is the support of communities up and down our amazing coast here in British Columbia. And so if you want to put that goodwill at risk, if you want to threaten these projects and say, you know, we know that your goodwill and your support is dependent on a tanker ban, that the fishing grounds that you count on, the tourism you count on, the lifestyle that you enjoy as a coastal community member, that it's protected by the tanker ban. If we want to say we're going to get rid of that tanker ban and we're going to go after your way of life, let's at least make sure that the conversation is about a real project. Right now, the province of BC, the Premier of BC, is not a threat to the pipeline project of the Premier of Alberta because there is no pipeline project. There is a public relations department. There is a Crown Corporation with $14 million. The only way currently that project is going forward is with tens of billions of dollars of public money. And if this is in fact another multi-billion dollar federally funded Alberta project, then where is the multi-billion dollar federally funded project in British Columbia? That is the question that I'm asking. And what is the opportunity cost of a multi-billion dollar taxpayer-funded Alberta project compared to what we can deliver here in BC, what we can deliver in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Ontario, Quebec, the Maritimes, Newfoundland, the Territories? You show those premiers the opportunity to spend tens of billions of federal tax dollars, and what can they deliver? Give everybody a fair shot. It's not the Danielle Smith show, it's the Canadian team. And we all deserve the same opportunity for the same federal funding for our projects as she does for hers. That's not un-Canadian, that is fair, and there is nothing more Canadian than fairness. That is a core national value.
Fuming. I would love to see that. I'd love to get AI to convert that into German, so we could hear him say that in German. I think it would be quite interesting.
That's the most passion I've ever heard out of David Eby.
I mean, it was more than that. It was the whole press conference. Yeah. He was absolutely losing it. He was blowing his top, as they say. He was furious. It was actually quite entertaining, I have to say. Even though, like, it's all he's arguing against a straw man, as he does a lot, actually. David Eby. That seems to be his preferred technique for arguing against things. He just argues against something that is. He just misses the point on purpose and argues against something that isn't reality. So in this whole thing, he was saying it's going to take taxpayers' money, and this project's not real. It doesn't exist. Blah blah blah. It's kind of like just totally ignoring the fact that the reason that the project isn't real, as he says, is because of his support and other people's support of laws that make it basically impossible to build this kind of thing. That's the most important context. Why would a private company come forward and say, all right, here's $20 billion for a pipeline that is impossible to build? Yeah. Because of federal rules, federal laws. Obviously, that's like the most important piece of information. But David Eby was just arguing. He was arguing in a different world where that wasn't the case. And then somebody at the end asked him, one of the reporters was like, sorry, can you just confirm? So you are against this pipeline explicitly, and you are against rescinding the removing the ban on tankers on the North Coast. And then he was kind of like offended by that. He was like, well, gee, I thought I was being clear. But it's like, you're not being clear because you're arguing against something else. He's arguing as if we live in a world where it's just, there's no point in a private company trying to pump oil to the BC coast and export it. Like, that's just not viable. That's not the truth. That's very, very viable and it's very desirable. But the reality is there are certain laws on the books that he likes and supports that almost make it illegal to make a profit off doing that kind of things. It's just pointless. There's just no point in even beginning.
I just got an email here that's sent into our newsroom here because obviously this is what they do when they don't like what they hear. Somebody writes in and puts the headline in there, my name, and spells my name CYST. Like, the Liberals are always so tolerant and inclusive, right? So they've turned my name into cyst, which is great. And then it says
That's
that I
pure racism.
And just whine and bitch.
That's anti-Eastern European racism.
Whine and bitch because I've done nothing with my life and I'm happy making $66,000 a year. And then, and it said in the private sector, his base was $650 and he used to get a bonus and talks about, well, it's great that he did all that, right? And it just, and then he goes off and says, Pierre Poilievre is, garbage. And that just us right-wingers think he's Messiah. I don't think we ever said he was the Messiah. And a Harvard-educated bean counter is much better than a career politician, yeah. And then, I love the last line, tell him to sell his silly gold necklace. Gold prices are excellent right now. Just this is the tolerance that they want for everybody except for anybody that disagrees with them. It's just absolutely ludicrous. Like, learn.
Very cheeky, isn't it?
The media's job is to hold power accountable. And of course, the liberal bots out there are there to prop up power for some strange reason. I don't know what it is, but it seems odd to me. But anyway.
Yeah. I'll just add quickly as well on back to Eby for a second. Like, the main takeaway that I got from this rant of his was that he thinks that if this oil pipeline is pushed through, obviously he's panicking, he's worried that is going to happen. But he thinks if it's pushed through, then the First Nations, who have very kindly and generously given him permission to go ahead with what he calls $40 billion worth of projects, like the LNG project. Oh, there's a couple of LNG projects. But he thinks they will withdraw their consent for those projects because of the oil pipeline, that they'll just throw all the toys out of the pram and say, we're not going to play anymore. I find that, again, like we were talking about this the other day, weren't we, about the cowardice of politicians in Canada who won't talk about things like property rights. You're going to be doing that interview today, aren't you? The title issue in Richmond. Now, what is this if not cowardice? What David Eby is just completely accepting as, like, it's as true as the wind and the sun. Like, as sure as there'll be a dawn and a sunset, First Nations, these tiny little bands on the BC coast, can determine Canada's economic policy by themselves. They make that decision. And it's up to us as democratically elected premiers to just try and appease them and get them to give us permission to have an economy. That's just not been engaged with at all, that idea. And it's not just Eby. I mean, Mark Carney hasn't done it either. But this is a question probably for Canadians and British Columbians, isn't it? It's like, who decides what happens to the economy in Canada and in British Columbia? Is it these small bands, many of them that don't even have elections, or if they do, consist of a few people, like maybe a few hundred? Or is it the democratically elected leaders and the parties? Who's in charge? Like, that's a question really to be asked.
We're going to skip a couple things because we're running out of time, because I got a 10:30 interview with Jeff Moyse, the Aboriginal lawyer. I think he worked for the government for 31 years. He's been practicing for 33 years in Aboriginal law, and we're going to talk about that Cowichan decision. But Danielle Smith says she'll give Carney until the Grey Tup to fix those 9 bad laws. She's actually put a date out there now, and we'll see what happens. We were going to play that clip from Danielle Smith, but we've heard what she's had to say before. But the thing on David Eby, like, if he thinks it's a nothing thing, then why is he getting so worked up about it? Do you know what I mean? Because he knows he doesn't have the right to stop it, because it's a federal thing. But the feds have also said that they're never going to impose anything on any of the provinces. So they kind of put themselves in a corner as well, right? So it's
and that is an extraordinarily foolish thing to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
And let's be honest. If you want if you want to revitalize and revolutionize the Canadian economy, but then you say, all right, 13 people have a veto, plus the First Nations, because he also did say First Nations had to be interested as well. So, yeah, I mean, this is the fundamental absurdity of it, really, isn't it? It was elbows up in Canada First for about 5 minutes, and then now we're back. Now it's normal procedure, isn't it? And you've got David Eby ranting furiously and attacking his neighbouring premier.
Litter Sturco, families can't put food on the table or get health care. Young people can't find a job, build a home. Addiction, death, crime, chaos rampant. Our province in crisis. British Columbia deserve better than this, than an incompetent NDP government. And she's talking about Eby takes a beating at that hostile developer lunch. And that's where he said he was wrong. He actually got pressured and said, I was wrong on the decriminalization. Yet, it still runs to January. Unbelievable. Somebody was asking about Sam Cooper here. And here you go. We got a little clip here from Sam Cooper. They're saying we should put Sam Cooper on. Yeah, and we'll reach out and see if we can get Sam Cooper on. But here you go. Here's a little bit of Sam Cooper.
Some of my reporting has covered complaints from U.S. government sources that say that they are no longer comfortable sharing sensitive intelligence on international investigations that are relevant to Canada with their Canadian partners because they have encountered known cases where they warned the RCMP that they believed people attending sensitive meetings from the Canadian side were involved in corruption. And yet, as I was told and reported, those meetings proceeded. So this gave the Americans the message that Canada wasn't taking Washington's concerns of corruption within Canada's most sensitive investigative arm seriously. And I've further been told that senior U.S. drug enforcement source investigators are alarmed by what they see as RCMP's casual acceptance of corruption within its ranks. And this speaks directly to the matters we're examining today.
There you go. Actually, I'll reach out and see if I can get Sam Cooper to come on. He's does a lot of stories. He seems to have some pretty good sources out there. Renee Merrifield speaks very highly of Sam Cooper. We're going to move on to our international.
He's a good lad, but he doesn't fill you with happiness and joy and optimism, does he? It's like when you read his stories or listen to him, it's just like it just feels like it's over, man. It's like there's no hope.
Well, I mean, according to the guy that emailed in, it might be the same for us, they say. But anyway, here's we're going to do our international segment here.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
We don't have much here this morning, but CNN, we had a little bit more from CNN's Caitlin Collins there. And she talks about, Trump doesn't sleep. And we're going to play a little clip here from Caitlin. We played a clip from her yesterday from this interview.
Not really.
And nor does
President
Trump. No, I know. I slept 4 hours last night.
And you feel fine? Okay, that's
I'm on my, this is my fourth cup.
It's not on the screen. There we go. We're going to see if we can get it here.
Cup of coffee.
4 hours is nuts. 4 hours is Trump level.
4 hours. Yeah. And the night before was like 6. Before that was like 7. So it varies. But is that what he sleeps? Like 4 hours?
He does not sleep.
Yeah, I did Fox and Friends finance segment, and it was just on Gen Zs and finance. And one of the executive producers we just want to show you around, and they showed me the control room. And I said, how have things been in the control room as of late? She's like, none of us are sleeping because the president doesn't sleep. We're all working 2 times right now. Do you feel that same way?
I was just talking to someone about this because we wrote this story on what traveling with him is like in the first term, because I had this source who said, you never want to be on Air Force One on a trip. And I said, why? You'd think you want to be in the axis of power close to Trump. He doesn't sleep on these trips. And you're going to Asia or something, and that's kind of the only time you're going to sleep before you go on this trip.
Yeah.
But Trump is just always up and talking. And he'll have them go wake staff up if they're asleep because he wants to talk to them.
Huh.
And so we have this big trip to Asia coming up, and you're not going to sleep on that flight.
That's good. Yeah. There you go. I guess
it's pretty funny, isn't it?
the laws of equilibrium. We had a president that slept all the time, and then one that doesn't sleep. So maybe it just works out. It just balances.
There are some people. There's just some studies have been done. Studies have been done on this, and there's some people that are kind of, it's a genetic thing. That DNA
5 hours
allows them to sleep for like a few hours, but the vast majority of people can't do that and without suffering immensely.
5 hours is usually the max I get every day. I'm up at 2:30 usually every day. So there you go. Elon Musk.
You're one of those people, then.
Elon Musk does not sleep either. So there you go.
Neither does Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Neither does Arnold. He said just sleep faster. But I don't have as much money as either one of them. According to the guy that emailed in, I just have a very shallow life, and nothing as great as his when he was making $2 million a year. Like, I mean, what is literally wrong with people? Don Lemon, irrelevant after he got fired from CNN, is now walking the streets there and trying to drum up what he said, race baiting and stuff like that. And he's tried this a few times, and it's kind of backfired on him. Here, another clip here from Don Lemon trying to get some of that reaction out there. I guess that's how he's getting more relevant. Him and Chris Cuomo trying to make amends for what they've done in the past.
We're talking about the current environment, political environment. How are you feeling about that?
Unsettled and reassured by humanity is the short answer.
What do you mean by that?
So this weekend I was at a NASCAR race, and obviously there's some stigma attached to NASCAR. And what was really clear to me is that in the end, people are people. And whether you look a certain type of way, whether you're wearing a certain color hat, whether you're not, when you are at an event and there's a shared love and a shared intersection, people really just end up being people, right? And I was really warmed and taken back by my own preconceived notations of what I should be expecting.
There's a message there for you, Bernie. You need to allow other people to speak as opposed to just having one voice in this crazy world. Let's talk about silver, though. Silver banging on the door of a record, and this is, like you look at these times it spiked. That was back in 1980 when the Hunt brothers tried to corner the market. That was short-lived as they kind of like lost their shirt in that little venture there. And then I think it was in 2020 there, it kind of spiked, and I think that was kind of like or 2016 there. I can't see right now, my glasses, but. Here we are, it looks like technically like it's going to blow through the all-time highs here and push way higher as gold has pushed to record territory here as China keeps buying. Many central banks continue to buy. Canada, the only G7 nation not to own any gold in reserves. Weird.
Even though a lot of gold is produced here. But this is just insane, isn't it? Like it was 2,000 last year. Was that right? Yeah. Well, that's just mad. It's like doubled in a year.
Some people have called for it to go way higher. I mean, who knows? I mean, when I was a youngster, I started buying gold at $200 an ounce. That was the first Iraq war there when. What was that? The Coalition of the Willing, or what was that? The first George Sr. went in there, the Kuwaiti thing.
Yeah, Desert Storm.
Desert Storm, that's right. Desert Storm, and I was working at the mill still. I was working at a Canadian Forest Products at the time at a sawmill when all that stuff was going on, and you were glued to CNN at that time because CNN basically had like a live video game going, showing you that war. And then it was the second one came with the son showed up to try and finish it, right? George W. And then
crazy that happened. That was, I mean, that it was father and son in the same country. It's almost like something from antiquity, isn't it? It's crazy that like
where
actually happened.
Where else has that happened? Where there's a father and son. One gave us some freedom and the other one took it away. Weird. That's our show for today, though. That's it. That's all we got. I have Jeff Moyse at 10:30 here. We're going to talk about the DRIPA. We're going to talk about UNDRIP. Where did I get DRIPA from? UNDRIP. And the decision here and what that means with the Richmond lands and that judgment there with giving that title to the Cowichan tribe. Interesting times. And Pierre Poilievre now speaking out on it a lot. So interesting times for sure.
Big question.
That's our show. Again, go watch the interview with John Carpe. Good interview. Beyond the Ballot was yesterday with Renee Merrifield. And what do we else? We got some other stuff coming up this week as well. Here, what we got on? We have. Well, I got the MNP trustee liquidation. We're going to talk about the economy here in Canada, with a lot of people claiming bankruptcy, and that's Gene Herman there from MNP. And then Gavin Dew, we're going to talk about small businesses, and that's not tomorrow. And then on Friday, still got an open calendar. So we got a couple of people we're trying to get in, though. That economic winter one did really well. We're going to try to get some people in on how to survive an economic winter. And all these interviews are streamed for sure. Like we live stream everything, and then also they end up on the site, and you can watch them afterwards. They all end up on Now Media, though, right? But John Carpe, I've interviewed him like 4 or 5 times now, right? So we do have John Carpe as a regular, and he's going to book a lot more stuff too as things happen here. Thank you for everybody for watching. If you like, share, comment. Even when you're mean like that one guy that wrote in and made fun of my name, that just seems so unnecessary, doesn't it?
Back in high school. I mean, maybe not even high school.
Yeah, and the funny part is the liberals are supposed to be, and I used to be a liberal, I guess you would say. Jean Chrétien was my favorite politician, but where they went, this is the party that's become violent, aggressive, and just intolerant, and not for me. No, thank you. So thank you for watching Now Media.
Report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.